All right, so today we're diving into a book that I think a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with,
Sure.
Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely.
It's a classic.
And, we got this request from a listener to kind of dig into the table of contents.
Oh, interesting.
So we don't actually have the full book in front of us, but we have this table of contents. And I thought, you know what?
Yeah.
It's actually pretty cool to look at the contents and kind of get a sense of
Right, like the structure.
the structure of the arguments.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe even some of the insights just by looking at how the book is laid out.
Yeah, totally.
No.
And it's like you get a sneak peek
A sneak peek.
at the author's mind, right?
Yeah.
How are they approaching this topic?
Yeah, and I'm noticing already, just glancing at this, that it seems like Ariely is really, he starts with this idea of relativity.
Yeah.
So like right off the bat, he's kind of saying, hey,
Yeah.
we think we're making these rational decisions, but actually
Not as in control as we think we are.
it's all relative, right?
Yeah. And you see that in all sorts of economic decisions, right?
Totally. Like,
Even just like simple things like buying a cup of coffee.
buying a cup of coffee.
If you see one that's $2 and one that's $4,
Right,
you might think, oh, the $2 one is a good deal.
right.
But if you saw that $2 cup of coffee on its own,
Yeah.
you might think twice about it.
Totally. And so he's kind of setting the stage there, I think, to say, like, our perception of value
It's warped.
is warped. It's not this objective thing.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of leads into the next chapter, which is the fallacy of supply and demand,
Right.
which is, this classic economic principle.
Which is like economics 101, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
he's basically saying
Yeah.
that it's not as simple as that.
Yeah, it's not as simple as that. There are these other forces at play.
Yeah, psychology, emotions, all these things.
And then he goes right into this chapter called The Cost of Zero Cost.
Ooh, this is a good one.
This one is so interesting.
Well, you think we can all relate to this?
It really is about this idea that, like,
Free stuff is irresistible,
yeah,
even if we don't need it.
yeah. And I know I'm guilty of this.
Me too.
Like, how many times have you, like, gotten a free t-shirt or something and you're like, I'm never going to wear this.
It's in the back of my drawer somewhere.
But you can't resist the
Right. It's free.
pull of free.
Yeah. There's something about that word free that just like
Lights up our brains.
totally shorts out our rational decision making.
Absolutely. And then he moves into this idea of social norms.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the cost of social norms. This is really interesting, too.
Yeah. This is about how like
Yeah.
we have these different ways of interacting with each other.
Right. Like, sometimes it's a transaction and sometimes it's more of like a social obligation.
Yeah. Like if a friend asks you to help them move,
Right.
you're probably not going to charge them for it.
Right.
It's like a social norm to help your friends.
Exactly. And then he talks about how introducing money into those situations can actually kind of screw things up.
Totally. It changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah, because then it's like
It's no longer about friendship. It's about like
comes a job.
a business transaction.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that makes you think about like
Yeah.
what really motivates us.
Totally.
Like, are we just all ultimately motivated by money?
Right.
Or are there other things?
Like, yeah.
Social connection and reciprocity.
And then we get to a chapter that I think is going to be really juicy. The influence of arousal.
Ooh, yeah. This was going to be fun to talk about.
And, he's not just talking about like,
Right, not just like being excited about a sale at the grocery store.
exactly. He's talking about like
Sexual arousal.
sexual arousal. Yeah. So like,
How our decision-making changes
totally.
when we're in that state.
Yeah. And I think this is where he really starts to get into
The nitty-gritty.
like the nitty-gritty of like how our emotions
Yeah.
really influence our decisions.
Totally. Like, think about all the times you've done something.
Yeah.
When you're really emotional that you later regret.
Oh, yeah.
Like saying something you shouldn't have or
Yeah.
spending too much money.
Or eating a whole pint of ice cream.
Exactly.
When you're feeling down.
We've all been there.
And so like this is, I think, where he starts to really connect it to like real life,
Mhm.
like real world decisions that we make.
Yeah, and he even has an appendix for this chapter that focuses specifically on safe sex,
Oh, wow.
which I think is really important because it shows
Yeah.
how our decisions about sex can be especially influenced by arousal.
Right.
Like we might have all these good intentions when we're thinking clearly,
Right.
but then in the heat of the moment,
Everything goes out the window.
all those rational thoughts go out the window.
And it makes me think about the tables that are listed in this table of contents.
Yeah.
There's one that's like, rate the attractiveness of different activities.
Oh, interesting.
And then another one that's like, rate the likelihood of engaging in immoral behaviors. I'm guessing those are probably related to this chapter.
Probably. He's probably using those to show
Yeah.
like how our perceptions of what's attractive and what's immoral
Totally.
change when we're aroused.
Right. Like what we might find totally unacceptable
Yeah.
in a calm state
Yeah.
might seem totally different when we're not thinking clearly.
Exactly.
And then he goes into this like super relatable chapter on procrastination.
Oh, yeah. The problem with procrastination and self-control.
Like who hasn't struggled with this?
I mean, everybody procrastinates to some extent.
yeah, like why do we do it?
Right.
We know it's bad for us.
Yeah, it's like we know we should be working on that project or
Right.
going to the gym.
Yeah.
But we just keep putting it off.
And it's interesting because the next chapter is the high price of ownership.
Mhm.
And I wonder if there's a connection there.
Maybe it's like we procrastinate on getting rid of things.
Right.
Because we overvalue them.
Because once we own something,
Yeah.
we think it's worth more.
Yeah, we get attached to our stuff.
Yeah.
Even if it's junk.
Even if it's objectively not worth that much.
Exactly.
Like I'm thinking about my old car.
Yeah.
I was so emotionally attached to that car.
Oh.
But it was a clunker.
But it had sentimental value.
It had sentimental value.
Yeah.
But like I probably could have gotten rid of it sooner.
Yeah.
And, this kind of connects to the idea of keeping doors open.
Right, which is another chapter in the book.
Which is another chapter, like this fear of missing out.
Yeah, FOMO.
FOMO. We don't want to commit to one thing
Yeah.
because we might miss out on something else.
And it makes me think like maybe we overvalue what we own.
Yeah.
Because we're afraid of like closing that door.
Yeah.
Of getting rid of something.
Like, what if I need it later?
Yeah, exactly.
What if I regret it?
Exactly. And then the next chapter is the effect of expectations.
Ooh, this is interesting.
This is like so powerful.
Yeah.
If we expect something to be good.
We're more likely to experience it as good.
Yeah, it's like even if it's not actually that great.
It's like the placebo effect.
Totally. And this kind of sets the stage for the power of price.
Right, because then he's saying like,
Yeah.
price can actually change.
Our perception of a product.
Yeah, like if something is expensive,
Like we assume it's better.
we assume it's better.
Even if it's not.
Even if it's objectively the same as a cheaper product.
Exactly.
And he gives that great example of the aspirin,
Oh, yeah.
where the people who took the more expensive aspirin
Reported feeling better.
reported feeling better, even though it was the same aspirin
Yeah, it's
as
wild.
the cheaper aspirin.
Our brains are so easily tricked.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then he gets into this really important topic of honesty,
Right.
the context of our character.
Part 1 and part 2.
Yeah, so he's really digging deep into this.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that
Yeah.
he's not saying that there are just a few bad apples
Right.
who are dishonest.
He's saying that we're all capable of dishonesty
Okay.
under the right circumstances.
Yeah, exactly. Like certain situations can make us more likely to cheat or lie.
And he even mentions the 10 Commandments in the appendix for this chapter.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if he's looking at like,
The role of morality
yeah,
and religion in all of this.
yeah. And then part 2 is why dealing with cash makes us more honest.
This is fascinating.
This is so relevant right now
Yeah.
with like everyone using credit cards and Apple Pay and stuff.
It's like we're becoming more and more detached from the actual exchange of money.
Right.
And I think he's arguing that
Yeah.
that detachment makes it easier to be dishonest.
Yeah, like if you're not physically handing over cash,
Yeah.
it's easier to justify.
To fudge the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, or to like
Cheat on your taxes
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
It's like the physical act of handing over cash
makes it more real.
makes it more real and makes you more accountable.
Totally.
So yeah, I think this is a really important chapter for our times.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then he wraps up the book with beer and free lunches, which is kind of a funny title.
Yeah, it's like a lighthearted way to end
Yeah.
after all that heavy stuff
After all that heavy stuff.
about dishonesty and
Yeah.
self-control.
Yeah, I guess he's saying like,
Yeah,
look, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
right.
But
Right.
understanding our irrationalities can help us make better choices.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So just looking at this table of contents,
Yeah.
I feel like we've already learned so much.
Right. It's amazing how much you can glean from just the structure of the book.
Like you can see how Ariely is building his argument.
Yeah.
He's starting with these basic principles
Yeah.
of like relativity and supply and demand.
And then he's like, okay, here's how those principles play out
Yeah.
in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
Here's how they affect our relationships,
Right.
our finances, our health, our morality.
Yeah, and it's all connected.
Yeah, it's all part of this bigger picture
Yeah, of how we make decisions.
of how our brains work.
Yeah, and he's using all this research
Yeah, he's got data.
He's got data, he's got experiments, he's got anecdotes to really back up his claims.
To make it real for people.
To make it real and relatable.
Yeah.
So for our listeners out there, I'm curious, what are you taking away from this?
Yeah, what resonated with you?
Like, what are the things that you're thinking about now in terms of your own decision-making?
Like, did any of these chapter titles jump out at you?
Yeah.
As particularly relevant to your life?
Yeah, like, do you find yourself overvaluing your possessions or procrastinating?
And giving in to the allure of free stuff.
Yeah, or letting your emotions cloud your judgment.
Yeah, and if so, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, what are you going to do about it?
Because that's the whole point of this, right?
That's the whole point.
It's not just to be like, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
It's to actually change our behavior.
To make better choices.
To make better choices.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave you with this. Final thought.
Yeah.
Think about all the different ways that we're predictably irrational. Like all the things we've talked about today.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself, what's the one principle that has the biggest impact on your life?
Yeah.
Like, what's the one thing that you really need to work on?
Yeah.
And then what's one small step you can take today to start making better choices?
To start being a little bit less irrational.
Yeah.
A little more in control.
A little bit more in control.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for sending us this table of contents.
Yeah, this was fun.
It was really interesting to kind of
dive in,
even without the full book.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see you next time.
See you later.